Wow. Hello there, welcome to another video. Before we get into it, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel, yada yada yada. I'm really excited for this episode, so let's just jump right into the breakdown. So, this week's episode starts off with the character Peli Motto clearly scamming a Rhodian to fix his ship. She's made a deal with the Jawas where they go and wreck someone's ship, and then she puts it back together, and then they both get a cut. It's honestly a pretty good scheme. Mando docks in her hangar, and he is looking for the circuit that they need to revive IG-11. She says that she doesn't have it, but that she can sell R5 to Mando for half price. If you don't know, R5 is the droid on Tatooine from episode 4 that had the bad motivator. And then, of course, R2 takes his place. With a little bit of convincing, Mando accepts. She installs an astromech port for Mando's ship, and Mando and Grogu head off to Mandalore. While in the ship together, Mando is giving Grogu a few teachings. I think it's really cool how he's obviously taking kind of more of a mentor role, where before he was more just, I'm taking care of you until I can get rid of you, and now it's more, I'm stuck with you, so you have to learn everything. I just really like how they're showing how he's diving deep into the dad role. They get through the atmosphere of Mandalore, and they mention that basically all comms are off on this planet. That concept has been used in a comic book with Obi-Wan and Anakin a few years ago, I believe. Mando has R5 go out and take an air sample so that they know that the air isn't toxic. And then R5 goes off of the radar and they have no idea where he is. Mando says that he'll pressurize his helmet and go and try to find him. He gets in a skirmish with a few of these aliens that are apparently native to Mandalore, uses the Darksaber to take them out. It was a pretty cool action scene, and he kind of makes short work of them, even though he clearly still cannot wield the Darksaber because of how heavy it is, at least to him, which we'll get into a little bit later. He finds R5, gets the data, and realizes that the air is in fact not toxic, and that the curse was nothing more than a story. Mando takes Grogu deep down into the mines, where if you look hard enough you can see a few clone helmets. I believe I saw a battle droid head, old Mandalorian helmets, and other Easter eggs scattered around in the scrap. I'd like to really take a minute and look really hard at just about every frame of this entire scene when they're in the Mandalorian catacombs, because just from the little glancing I did, it was clear that Dave Filoni hid a lot of Easter eggs in here. Mando finds a discarded Mandalorian helmet and is clearly kind of sad, because even though he'd never been to Mandalore or even really knew any other Mandalorians outside of his sect, it's of course going to be hard to kind of see the remnants of your people. Mando is suddenly sucked up by this giant machine with this monster thing that just took him and paralyzed him or put him to sleep or whatever they did. He was incapacitated. Now, I have no idea what this thing is, but it definitely looks very cyborgish. There's clearly some organics, but also he has a striking resemblance to General Grievous with those 4 arms. Some of his mechanics also kind of look like Kazdan Paratus from Star Wars The Force Unleashed. I just wouldn't be surprised if that was some of the inspiration. Mando tells Grogu to get out of there and to go find Bo-Katan. It was actually really cool seeing Grogu get away. He's dodging and dipping and doing flips, and you can very much tell that the 2 years of training he did with Luke definitely paid off, because even though he is technically still a child, he's definitely not the little hopeless, helpless baby that we saw in the first episode of The Mandalorian. I just thought it was really cool. He tells R5 to fly him to the planet where Bo-Katan is living. Bo-Katan thinks that it's Mando and is asking what happened to him. She downloads the data from R5 and finds out that they went to Mandalore, and her and Grogu shove off. They go into the atmosphere, and you can tell Bo-Katan is pretty distraught looking down at the wreckage. Grogu and Bo-Katan go down, and they encounter the same monsters that attacked Mando earlier in the episode. They fight, and Bo-Katan of course bests them, and it was just really cool seeing Bo-Katan, and I really just never get tired of seeing her be awesome. Back with Mando, it seems like the creature is trying to drain his blood, perhaps for whatever organics is still left of this creature. Bo-Katan comes in to save the day and ends up grabbing the Darksaber and using it to defeat the creature. Now, while using it, she did not have any trouble with its weight and how heavy it was, which I find really interesting. I do plan on making an entire video on that, but it's honestly just really interesting on who can and can't wield the Darksaber, and even though she's not technically the rightful owner, she still knows how to use that thing. She rescues Mando and he wakes up maybe an hour later. He says that he is still going to go down to the mines and that without the Creed, nothing really matters to the Mandalorians. They have nothing to stand for. Bo-Katan says that she'll escort him down to the mines and that he'd probably not be able to make it there with all of the wreckage of Mandalore. They talk about Bo-Katan's father, which is interesting because we never really hear about. I'm actually pretty surprised that they didn't mention her sister, which of course is Satine. Tells Mando that her father was a great man and that when she was a child, she was basically the perfect little princess, which of course we know isn't true because years later she ends up joining Death Watch. They get to the mines and Bo-Katan, to me at least, seems like she is anticipating something. She reads off that the mines used to be a mythosaur lair and that Mandalore the Great ended up taming the beast years and years ago. Mando walks into the living water and ends up getting pulled down by something. Again, they kind of zoom in on Bo-Katan's face right before this happens, as if she is expecting something to happen. She goes in to rescue him and mid-rescue ends up seeing a live mythosaur. This is the first time we're seeing a mythosaur in canon. I mean, even looking up mythosaurs on Google, there is almost no images of it. And now we finally get to see a real one in canon. And it looks exactly like the skeleton. It looks really great. The mythosaur looks right at them and doesn't attack, which I also find interesting. Bo-Katan and Mando jet out of there. End of episode. How fantastic was that? Honestly, this was mostly a Grogu and Bo-Katan episode, and I really loved that. I really loved seeing all of the different areas of Mandalore, how it was very familiar, but at the same time, it was so destroyed that it's also unfamiliar. I don't know if they used the volume for this, but it looked really good. Really glad that there was no filler in between this episode. Usually they have the first episode, then the second one is kind of filler, and then the third one is when they get back to business. Glad that they kind of skipped that step this season and just jump right into what's interesting. For me, I have to give this episode an 8.5 out of 10. Bo-Katan was great, Mando was great. It was really cool seeing Grogu kind of jump around and not be the little damsel in distress that Mando has to rescue. In fact, he was the one doing the rescuing. I just really can't wait for episode 3, and I can't predict what's gonna happen in this show, which is really impressive. I have no idea the motivations of Bo-Katan, which makes her kind of a character to watch. In the trailers and even in that first episode, it seemed like she was going to be the antagonist, and that still seems like it's a possibility, but also at the same time, we know Bo-Katan is very capable of good. Again, I'm extremely excited for this episode, but I have to get off and get this video edited so I can start on the Bad Batch breakdown. So make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. That's all I got for you guys today. Bye.